Now, we've all heard statements like we're in a transition of sorts. Social media is very crucial. We need to think out of the box. Traditional media is passé. Consumer engagement is paramount. So I thought, why not get a global creative legend and two high-profile Indian marketers and ask them some very pertinent questions on the stark realities that marketers and ad men face today. Ladies and gentlemen, take it away. Thank you so much for joining us. Mark Tutzel, truly a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
And of course, two very, very high-profile marketers, Manisha from Axis Bank and Wasim from Coca-Cola. Thank you so much for joining us. So we're discussing the future of brands, which is such a generic issue. But I want to go into specifics, talk about case studies. So I want to kickstart this discussion with something that we've all seen, which has been trending, the Red Bull, the free fall video that, has just gone berserk. What were your thoughts as somebody who's a creative pioneer when you saw that video?
We don't have a divine right to people's attention. So we have to be interesting, to be of interest to people. And I think the challenge or the actual event itself was of great human interest. And I think it was a very single-minded act. And I think the way it was televised, the way the idea spread virally and was amplified globally, really was I think something of great human interest that people genuinely wanted to involve themselves in and share. For the brand Red Bull, clearly, the perfect sponsor. How much of that sponsorship came through, I'm not too sure. I think through the eyes of a marketeer, they saw it on the helmet, they saw it on the parachute. But I think to the layman in the street watching that, it was just a great human feat of this crazy guy deciding to jump a mile from space into Earth. So I don't know the value it created for the brand, but certainly it created a great conversation. I would have liked to have seen it more inextricably linked back to the brand.
Okay. Let me get your view, Wasim, on the video, and what were the first thoughts you had as a marketer?
Oh my God, how did that guy do it? So it was, and literally it was because of that. It was just the awesomeness of the jump, who sponsored the jump, and all of those things came later.
Sure.
And specifically when you're in the category, you're looking at looking at what the others are doing in the category. So that's where it was a topic of interest. But precisely to what Mark said, how much of that rubbed off. But all of that aside, I think the point that you raised, is this the new code for marketeers in tomorrow's world? Yes, it is. One of the key things that we say inside Coca-Cola Company is, are you interesting enough to be shared?
Yes.
And that's the first call that you got to take in whatever you do. And consumers are not, they don't wake up every morning to talk about brands. They wake up every morning to live their life. And what are you going to do to become a part of their conversations is important.
Right.
And that's going to be the new code.
Well, that's interesting. So both points of view saying that, while it was a great video, they're not sure how the brand linking itself to the free fall actually connected. Would you be on the same page with them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that marketers have to sort of be more, have to have a good sense of judgment is which events to associate with and which not to associate degree. And I really think for the Red Bull free fall video, I mean, like Mark said, I don't know how many people remembered Red Bull. I mean, I watched, my kids were seeing the video and I didn't even notice that it had Red Bull written on it.
The value that story created for their brand is debatable. And I'm not saying it won't go on to create more value down the road if they're intelligent and they use this in a smart way. But the first thing it did do was create human interest.
Okay. If I had to ask you, you have, two very high-profile marketers sitting here. What's the problem with Indian advertising? Because, if you look at, let's say, Indian cinema versus Indian advertising, Indian cinema seems to be making more waves than Indian advertising is.
Yeah.
And considering the churn of ads is so much more than cinema, why is it that the evolution of Indian advertising is not as fast as Indian cinema?
I think you said one word, which was ads. And ads, by definition, seem sort of antiquated. I mean, you still see a lot of television and a lot of selling and not a lot of work that really has a core purpose at its heart, and then it's expressed and that story told in a fresh, new way.
Okay. So, Wasim, why are we still not up to speed? What is the problem?
I think the problem is a little bit more comfort with the familiar.
Sure.
And I guess that's where it starts from. But let me tell you, and it's not that change isn't happening. It's happening right here, right now. It's happening because key task for managing a conversation of brand Coca-Cola is to connect with the youth audience. What are they interested in? They're interested in music. So we did not go sponsoring a TV program which was music-based, or a reality show which was music-based. We went about creating music that did not exist with a Coca-Cola point of view to it. What's your act and not what's your ad? And that's the big change that needs to happen in the mindset.
So, Manisha,
Yep.
You heard Wasim,
Yes.
of course, and he's taken full advantage of marketing Coca-Cola. So, why do you think that, we're still, calling it draconian would be pushing it a bit too far, but for a lack of a better word, not up to speed with, let's say, even other emerging markets?
It takes time for people to get out of one generation and move on to the other.
Sure.
So I think the first thing that I feel is happening, what's happening is that some of the people who are in decision-making positions are no longer that connected with their audiences. And I think, you tend to think, oh, it must have been the way I was in college.
True.
But it isn't.
True.
Things have changed quite a bit. And we need to push ourselves and go out and see what's happening all the time. Because at the end of it, it doesn't help if all the brand managers are doing it. If the CMO is not going out and doing that, then they're likely to take the wrong decisions.
Sure.
So I think that's one. And that really translates into the brief.
Right.
And if the brief is not good, and that's the difference between cinema and advertising. Cinema is not driven by a brief. It's driven by an idea.
Right.
And you're not selling a brand. You're not making the same movie again and again. But, so you don't have any past to live up to, or, any future to look forward to. You are in the moment. You're just making that film.
I'm so glad you brought about this brief. And that's my next question, really. Is it time that we move away from a brief?
I think we can't move away from a brief.
Okay.
But we can change the way we arrive at the brief.
Okay.
And I think it's important to have a brief because it just gives a lot of clarity to everybody around the tables. But, it can't be written in a way that, oh, I've written the brief, now I'm going to give it to you, now you go do your job. You need a lot of co-creation. So I think that whole co-creation of many minds coming together, co-creating something, getting inspired, getting excited, just the way it happens in cinema. It's not one guy who makes a film.
I believe the great brands are driven by purpose. They have a high purpose and they activate that purpose in an interesting way. And so purpose-driven communication I think, is the future. Propositional-led advertising briefs are the past.
So, Mark, my next question to you is that I'm sure marketers such as these come to you and ask you for, a viral video. Could you make us a viral video?
Yes, they do.
And I believe that that is something that you're, struggling with, because you yourselves, like many others, really don't know what makes a video go viral.
There's no such thing as a viral video.
Sure.
The viral nature of an idea, the consequence of an idea, the share value of an idea is the result of an idea being so infectious, so contagious, that it spreads like wildfire. So I think we've got to get back to the conversation of ideas, and there's no such thing as the output.
I think for every instance where the client is asking for a viral film, there are enough instances where young creative folks come by and say, I've got a script for a viral. And, I think it's sort of, it's also their way to get in an idea, which might be sort of not that expensive for the client to produce, but somehow get it out there for people to see.
I want to, come to the end of this discussion by asking each one of you a very pertinent question to Mark, who represents the advertising industry.
How do we create for this world, which has become so fragmented from a media point of view, so unpredictable? How do you go about in a structured manner and deliver communication messages, or engage with your customers or consumers how do you be a good friend to them?
I think curation of talent is really important, and I practice something I call creativity without borders, and I really believe that the ideas can come from anywhere. And I think when you curate a team of people, of minds around a problem, there's always going to be a creative solution to that problem. So what I tend to do now is put together global teams of people from all walks of life. If you keep going to the same well and thinking in the same way, I think you end up with solutions, but a type of solution. I think if you infuse it with people who have nothing to do with the problem.
Your question?
Mark, in an increasingly always on, always in world, increasingly where consumers live their life 365 days a year and brands have to play a role in their life 365 days a year. Going back to the theory of content, and we are big believers in branded content and brands as content providers. One of the things that we are struggling with, and your point of view on how is the agency model going to change? How are you going to become content creators from ad creators? And for us, because what we need is a constant stream.
Yeah.
We know the mission for our brands. We know the purpose why we exist. So how is the advertising world gearing up to provide us that always on, always in content?
The question, I think, that's on the top of everybody's mind. True. In a communications company, you have to have a skill set second to none, and you have to not only have them housed within the company, have the ability to connect with other talents outside of the company. So I think it's incumbent on agencies now to bring together a brain trust, a creative trust that from all walks of life, and also I think that the thing that we do at LabourNet is invest heavily in tomorrow's generation, the next generation of thinkers. We have a thing called the energy pool, and they bring a freshness, and they challenge the status quo. They break the mold. They're brave, they're bold, they're looking at new ways of connecting to people. So they have their finger on the pulse of society and the pulse of life. They never use the word digital. They wouldn't know what it meant.
He asked you a very, very pertinent question. I'm asking you, what would you say to clients like Coca-Cola, right, who were constantly putting pressure on agencies, playing one against the other, dividing their businesses, sometimes with you, sometimes with another one, ensuring that each agency is at the top of their game. Would you say that by doing that, you as an agency who, let's say, hypothetically, you as an agency, because of this kind of constant pressure and shift, lose ownership and accountability for the brand?
They're saying, okay, and let's say who are the best thinkers in communication from all walks of life, and let's knit them together. What it demands is a new breed of communications director or marketing director at the heart of that, because that person has to have the ability to curate and to assemble the architecture and to be the conductor of that orchestra, because you've got to pull all of these parties together to maximize the potential.
What you're essentially saying is, where does the buck stop? It does not stop with the agency anymore. No more can one agency say that, I am the custodian of the brand. You can't be, because, you're not fully in control of what the brand is doing. So if that is the case, then the entire ownership then has to shift to the client and the client only, which then again makes you only a partial executioner.
Yeah, it does. It does. You pitch everybody against each other. The cons are that you don't get the best out of each individual player. Nobody takes responsibility. There are lots of things, but I think it's becoming more of the norm. We share many brands with many other agencies, and it works.
We would like that co-ownership, and I don't think any client ever is going to say, you go create that for me, I'm going to get that from somewhere, I'm going to get that from somewhere. It's a dream that if it all can come from one place.
But it's not.
When it doesn't, and things are changing, and like she said, the world is out there is changing faster than we can blink our eyelids. So it's as you get them together, and then I think we are all managing change right now.
Fair enough. Thank you so much. Thank you, Waseem. Thank you, Manisha. And thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
It's been truly a riveting discussion.
Thank you.
And I thank you all for taking time out and joining us on
My
Branding.
pleasure.